Okay, so just imagine being so revered, so respected, that you're called the crest jewel of an entire spiritual tradition. I mean, that's a pretty high bar, right? Well, today, we're going to dive into the incredible life of Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī. He was an absolute giant in the Gaudiya Vaiṣṇava faith. That's the devotional path from Bengal centered on Krishna. And his work, well, it shaped that tradition for centuries to come.
Yeah, this was his title, the crest jewel of the Vaishnavas. I mean, that's just a profound statement of respect, isn't it? So the big question is, who was this person, and how in the world did he earn such a remarkable honor? All right, let's get into it.
So if we really want to understand that title, we've got to unpack the life, the challenges, and the absolutely monumental work of the man who would become known as the protector and guardian of his faith.
And to get a real feel for who he was, we have to look at his life. From the very beginning, it was just defined by this intense, unwavering focus on spiritual devotion, often at the expense of what you or I might call a normal life.
His whole journey was really one of steady renunciation. You can see it right here. Born in 1638, he was a brilliant scholar. I mean, people said he was absolutely unbeatable in a debate. But, worldly success, that was never his goal. He actually renounced an arranged marriage, left his home for the holy land of Vṛndāvana, and just dedicated his entire life to writing and worship, right up until he departed this world in 1708.
And speaking of that marriage, there's an incredible story there. So his guru urged him to spend at least one night with his young wife. And he did. He obeyed. But get this, instead of, he spent the entire night chanting the holy names. This incredible act of detachment just blew his guru away. It was a clear sign that Viśvanātha was destined for a purely spiritual path.
So you see, this profound detachment, this intense personal devotion, that was the foundation. And on that foundation, he built an equally profound intellectual legacy. He wasn't just some participant in his tradition. No, he became one of its primary architects, clarifying its philosophy for generations and generations to come.
And this right here, this just illustrates the sheer scale of his work. He authored more than 40 Sanskrit books. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Over 40 complex, deeply philosophical and poetic works, all written by hand. The volume of work is just staggering.
And it wasn't just the quantity. It was the range of his writing. It was incredible. On one hand, he wrote what are still considered some of the most insightful commentaries, they're called tīkas, on core scriptures like the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. But then on the other hand, he also composed his own original masterpieces. Everything from really complex theology to beautiful, beautiful prayers like the Śrī Śrī Rādhā-Kṛṣṇa. And remember that one, because we're definitely going to come back to it.
But here's the thing. His role went way beyond just being a scholar in a library. At a really critical time in the tradition's history, he had to step up and become its fierce protector and guardian, defending it from challenges coming from both inside and out.
And that title, protector and guardian, wasn't something he gave himself. It was given to him by later spiritual masters. They looked back and recognized that during the 17th century, he was the one who stood firm. He was the one who preserved the purity and authenticity of the teachings.
So what was he actually up against? Well, a lot, actually. For starters, he had to defend the reputation of his own predecessor, making sure his spiritual lineage was seen as legitimate. Then, he had to argue powerfully that you didn't have to be a monk to be a spiritual master. Householders could be gurus too. And this was absolutely crucial, It kept the tradition accessible to everyone. He also had to push back against people who were misusing the prestigious Goswami title. And to top it all off, he defended the entire Gaudiya tradition in a huge debate in Jaipur, securing its place as a major philosophical school. Okay, but this brings us to one of the most fascinating stories about his life. While he was writing, he hit a wall, a theological puzzle that even his brilliant mind couldn't solve. He found a direct conflict between his own research and the words of a great master who came before him.
So here was the problem. He was analyzing a sacred mantra, the Kama Gayatri. His own super detailed research showed it had 25 full syllables. Simple enough, right? But the revered saint Krishna Dasa Kaviraja had written that it had 24 and a half syllables. A half syllable? How could that be? He was totally perplexed. He just could not figure out how to reconcile this half syllable.
Well, the answer didn't come from a book. It came in a dream. The story goes that Srimati Radharani, Krishna's divine consort, appeared to him and just solved the whole mystery. She explained that
Mystically, the letter Ya, when it's followed by the letter V, is considered a half syllable, and this corresponds to the half moon on Krishna's forehead. Wow! So this divine intervention didn't just solve a puzzle, it validated the work of the previous master and gave Vishwanatha's own work this incredible sacred authority.
So, when you put it all together, the scholarship, the devotion, the divine revelations, what's the lasting impact? Well, his legacy isn't just something in a history book. It's a living, breathing part of the tradition today.
Let's just quickly recap his massive contributions. He solidified the entire philosophical foundation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. His commentaries are still the go-to texts for students and scholars. He's even seen by many as an incarnation of the great saint Sri Rupa Goswami, which just shows you his immense spiritual stature. And of course, he composed that prayer we talked about. And this is where his legacy becomes so real and tangible for millions of people. That prayer, the Shriya Shri Guvaryastaka, is sung every single morning in ISKCON temples all around the world. Just think about that. A prayer he wrote in a humble little cottage in Vṛndāvana centuries ago now echoes daily across the entire globe.
And really, that just leaves us with this final, powerful question. The story of Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī shows us just how one person's devotion, their intellect, their humility, can create a legacy that shapes the spiritual lives of millions and millions of people for centuries. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?